Well, good afternoon. Thanks for tuning into Kalkine TV. I'm James Preston and it's time for another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks. We're currently smack dab in the middle of the season for a number of Australia's big sporting codes, not to mention at grassroots level. And for this expert talk, we're taking the opportunity to lace up our boots at Kalkine and take a look at the sports science part of the world. Sports Performance Tracking is a GPS tracking solutions outfit founded by CEO William Strange, and it provides important data for the development of amateur athletes. An innovator, William Strange developed the concept of SPT for his own use before realising the demand and turning his GPS tracking products into a business with customers now spread over 100 countries. But we don't need a GPS to find him because he joins us right now on the program. William, a very good afternoon to you.
Yeah, James, how are you going?
Mate, very good. I'm probably needing a GPS tracker myself after that intro. It's a big one, so the heart rate is pumping. But look, it's great to have your company. And just for our viewers who might not be completely across the concept of sports tracking GPS technology, one thing I always like to point out is something like the Telstra tracker that gets a lot of airtime when it comes around to state of origin broadcast. But can you simplify things even further for our audience?
Yeah, look, it's a really good observation that you'd see that on broadcast. You see it in the AFL, but you also see it in the NRL, state of origin, soccer games. You can log on to your apps and see how far the players are running and how fast they are. But it's really simple technology in some senses. So we look at how we've been tracking, where to go to in the car, on your bike, or if you're getting from A to B, what Uber Eats uses. That ability to track where you are now and where you're going is really, really powerful information. And when we make that applicable to amateur sports, you're talking football, soccer, hockey, rugby, the ability to track an individual player, put a GPS device in the back of their jersey and track everything about them is really important to understand how far and fast they're going, how hard they're working, and how they're going against their teammates. So that what you see on the TV is very much what we do to 70,000 athletes across the globe.
Yeah, look, it's come such a long way. I remember back when I was in high school, Nike released this little chip that you'd put in the bottom of your shoe, and that would simply track how many kilometres you're running at and pretty much at what pace. But the things that you're doing now, for example, that's got all sorts of data, whether it be fatigue, high intensity efforts, what kind of lateral movements are creating. So exactly what is within your data set in these outfits that you're creating?
Yeah, look, 10 years ago it was acceptable just to know how far and fast you ran. These days, people want to know what to do with that information, and that's the most important part. So whilst, yes, I can run 10, 11 kilometres, but I may look at the person next to me running 10 or 11 kilometres, but he's run it in 2 hours, I've run it in 45 minutes. So there's still such a disparity in the effort that's required for that. So what we actually do is we look at not only your top level metrics like distance, but how much time you spend in each zone. So the run, walk, jog, how much time you're spending in each of those. We break it down even further into zone 1 to 6, which is used by professional athletes across the globe as their norm of, I want to see X amount of minutes in zone 6, which is sprinting. So high intensity efforts. We've actually built a integrated heart rate vest that goes in your jersey. It then uses smart conductive electronics that take it back to the GPS in your back, so you don't have to sit there with a Bluetooth monitor on your sternum. It can track all your intrinsic efforts, so how hard your heart is pumping. So right now, maybe yours would be up there, but it can compare that to how far you're working, so you can do meters per beat and all these types of things to understand the actual output you're putting, not just how far you ran, but it's how you did that. What body of work did you do in each quarter? Where are you fatiguing? And identify deficiencies in order to change what you're training and what your game day output is.
We've kind of touched on this there, but I'll just dive into it a little bit more. How can the GPS performance tracking solutions that your company does help amateur athletes to measure their performance on the field and then obviously take their performance to the next step?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one. It's the first question everyone asks us. And our ultimate answer is you want to be able to predict what you're doing. So if you're training for something, if you're training for a marathon, you're running 42 kilometres. If you're training for a 20K run, you know what you're trying to get to. But in an Aussie rules game, in a soccer game, in a rugby game, whatever it is, you actually don't know. You've got 120 minutes, you've got 90 minutes to go as hard as you can. So you want to train specifically for it. So the ability to look at what you're doing in your position, in your granularity of your game, in wet weather conditions, in a large home ground. You want to be able to predict what's going to happen in order for you to make those decisions. You also, one of the biggest things that we see people using it for is load management, so preventing injuries. The ability to keep players out on the park is so important. It's become this cult figure over in the US, players missing games, LeBron James missing games because of load management. And this isn't just elite level. This is, amateur level across the globe. Have been doing this for a few years quite quietly. And they've been partnering with SPT to do it, to identify which players need a rest, when they need a rest. Otherwise, they get injured. And we all know you can't win if your best players aren't on the park.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, I was watching Moneyball the other night, actually, which is obviously another thing that really looks into the numbers game when it comes to baseball. And you're right, all those American sports in particular, absolutely data, just piles of it that they pour through to make sure they're getting increased performance from the team overall and individual players. I want to ask you as well, based on that kind of information that you're seeing from the US and also here in Australia, when you're liaising with your clients, such as coaches and I guess high performance managers for certain teams, whether it be grassroots level or getting to move up to sort of Australian Institute of Sport kind of level, how much emphasis are they putting on the work you're doing with SPT?
Yeah, look, it's very regional based. So if we look at the work that's been happening in Australia for the past 4 years, this has become the norm. As I said, we've got over 1,000 teams here in Australia that have been using us for many years. As we've progressed over the past couple of years into the USA, we've now got the first 300 or 400 customers over there, colleges and high schools, starting to look at this, starting to understand it. So they're probably in this capacity a couple of years behind. So the prevalence of how much these are used in different areas across the globe is quite dramatic. You've got your probably high performance led regions like Australia and New Zealand and maybe England. Then you've got the people that are catching, and through sheer size they're going to catch quickly, which is the US. You've got South America, you've got components of Europe that are affluent to be able to get this technology and bring it in, understand it, and the education behind the sports scientist is really important, or the high performance. So it really does depend regionally, and what we've seen in the States is it's been very much about strength and conditioning. Now it's about daily performance, output performance, and injury management, rather than just who can push the fastest, who can throw the most weight around. It's actually about getting the most out of the athletes, whereas that's been the norm in Australia. In fact, probably the opposite, where strength and conditioning is slightly less important here. So it is really interesting where you go across the globe, that they're all at different levels.
Well, you were mentioning there as well that it's starting to creep into Europe in some of the more affluent countries, but how much exactly does your technology cost to apply to an athlete?
Yeah, so traditionally, when it enters a market, at the elite level is the first people that adopt these type of technologies. And, 7 or 8 years ago when we first entered the market, we were the first company across the globe to do it for under $1,000 per player. Now, come 7 years down the track. And at the moment, we're in that mid 300 mark per player.
Wow.
The units last a couple of years. There is some functionality that you can buy through the software. So the ability to, export that to your video analysis if you're watching your game on the internet. If you're, using any of our partners' video analysis programs, which are widely adopted, you can embed our GPS into that. But, essentially what you're looking at a team is about $3,500. That's a soccer team. Rugby team's pretty similar. Aussie rules, obviously, there's a few more players out in the park, so it's a little bit more than that. So that's for the GPS device, the software. It comes with a large charge dock for safety, security, and also uploading and downloading and charging, as well as the vests. There is another product, which is the heart rate vest, which is, again, a premium offering, which is about another $170, $180 per player. But you're looking at, all in all around a $4,000 or $5,000 commitment from a team when, the elite teams are spending upwards of $75,000 to $150,000. We've seen some colleges in the States spending $250,000 on this technology.
It's crazy numbers, absolutely crazy. And I guess that's part of what does make you quite different to your peers is the price point. But outside of the price point, what else is separating SPT from your competitors?
Yeah, look, it is crazy numbers, but at the same time, this is how valuable this can be. If you can keep good players out in the park, this is incredibly valuable, and it pays for itself. When it comes to our differences, as you said, cost is obviously one of them, but we sort of sit in that what we call the aspiring space. And one of the things that we think we do the best, and the reason why we're getting such uptick in the last sort of 24 months has been the adoption around our simple software. So we don't want to have something too complex. We could make this very, very complex with data sets coming out of the wazoo, but that doesn't give anyone value. Having 100 different metrics isn't valuable. Just have the metrics people want to use and can use. And we really focus. So we spend a lot of time speaking to our customers, focusing on what they're using our reference from elite teams around the globe, and trying to adopt some of that into the amateur market or the aspiring market, and really try and prescribe them and tell them what to think rather than just give them a whole bunch of information and say good luck.
Yeah, well, look, you're aiming at a slightly different clientele to some of those, NBA superstar kind of teams, whether it be the Mavericks or whatever else, or Charlotte Hornets. Take your pick. But I suppose with you, you're already in 100 different countries. You're wanting to be the world leader in wearable sports technology. Seems like you're on track for it, but how do you plan to achieve that target?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting philosophy around who we're going after. And, we have conversations, and in some cases we've got conversations with the most elite teams, and they're wanting to bring our technology in. They want a bit of customization and they want a few more feature sets. What we've figured out is that there's this market of around 120 million athletes across the globe playing football, soccer, hockey and rugby that we think our product is perfectly designed for. And that actually means that we have to turn away customers. So our goal isn't to be everything for everyone. It's to be the best for our market. And that is that amateur athlete, that college and high school athlete, depending on which country you are. But ultimately, it's the players that, could go out and buy a Garmin, a Fitbit, have smartphones, but they can't use them in games and it doesn't give them enough information. So, our goal is obviously to grow as much as we can, but it's about building the right technology for the right audience, rather than what we've seen many people do is you chase a lot of rabbit holes and you find no rabbits. So we're going to really focus on that aspiring market, that 16-year-old up to 30-year-olds that love sport, love everything they do have the disposable income to spend $350 like they would on a pair of really high-quality footy boots, to give them amazing insights that can change the way they play, can get more out of them and keep them playing. Because ultimately, would you pay $300-400 to keep yourself on the field and keep yourself playing for a few more years? I certainly would if I still could, but my calves won't let me.
Mate, I wish it was the calves that were the least of my problems. 4 ACL reconstructions. I could barely stand up at this point. But just on your point as well about Garmin and things like smartwatches, I remember years ago when it was still sort of those little pods you'd put into your shoes or whatever else, I would actually run around on the soccer field with an iPod Nano wrapped in bubble wrap and 2 sweatbands on my arm just to try and get that sort of feedback. So, it's come a huge way in this. It's fantastic to see so many people jumping on board with you. Just before I let you go, 100 countries already, but do you have any further expansion plans?
Look, our priority is the USA at the moment. So the technology is born and bred here in Melbourne, Australia. The bulk of our team is here. We do have, a number of employees over in the States on the East Coast, and our goal is to conquer the States. The size of that prize is just phenomenal. The college and high school system is huge. It's, 20 times what we see here in Australia. So whilst we believe we're the dominant market player in our section of the market in Australia, if we can hold that in the States, which we're on the right direction, there's a big prize for us. If we look at other components of the globe, whether it's, the UK and Europe and that area, there are a couple of competitors over there that do it slightly differently to us. We think that Australia being the leader in sports science globally, and I'm very proud to say that, is we walk into any conversation in the USA and we can hold our own, because most of the high performance and sports scientists over in the NBA, the NFL, the MLB are Australians. So we are leading the way, and we think that we can win this in the USA.
Mate, looks like a really exciting future for the industry itself, and certainly for you guys at Sports Performance Tracking. William, awesome to chat, mate. Fair to say, if I did have one of your kits on right now, heart rate through the roof and the mind is well and truly focused. William, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
That's William Strange, founder and CEO of sports performance tracking, makers of wearable sporting technology. And if you enjoyed the interview, maybe you didn't catch the whole thing, you want to catch up with it on our YouTube channel, just head across to Kalkine Media and you can get the entire thing there, plus the rest of our catalogue. Well, that's it for me for today, but don't you go too far. There's still more to come on Kalkine TV. Holly Shields is in next to wrap up the entire day with the last trade. I'm James Preston for Kalkine TV.